Hello. Today has been day 3 of the 7DRL Challenge 2015 and my participation in it as a collaborator. So, how has today gone? Today has been mainly fixing problems. Well, I say today, really it's this evening. As you might expect, we're both adults, we've got full-time jobs. Evenings are the times when we're working on 7DRL. So, actually, it's relatively early in the 7DRL day, because we're only at sort of mid-evening at this point. But it feels late in the calendar day. So, the time we've been putting in this evening so far has mainly been spent fixing technical problems. And when I say we've been fixing technical problems, I of course mean he has. Because I don't have the technical know-how, and in fact could have been causing the problems all along, for all I know. But there's been a lot of us, sort of, me feeding my 7DRL buddy information and him trying to figure out what the hell was wrong and why I couldn't pull the new builds of the game. But the game is pressing on. We're making progress, things are changing, things are growing. So, although it's been frustrating in that we've mainly worked on fixing stuff so far this evening, we are still getting there, marching on toward our goal. And speaking of our goal, I'll show you around a bit just now. Wait there. So, let's do a little bit of a walk around of what we have of the game so far. Bear in mind that we're technically less than 3 days into the challenge at this point, so we're less than halfway through. There's a lot still to do. In fact, the bulk of the game isn't here. That's coming in the next couple of days. We have the game world, but not in full. It's a smaller version of the game world than we'll probably end up with. And the environment generation isn't in place yet. So although it will randomly generate layouts, it doesn't have all the different environments for different zones in which we're going to use. But I'll show you around a little bit. The first thing you'll notice, well, I suppose the first thing you might notice is the MMORPG style UI at the bottom of the screen. The other thing you might notice is the text at the top. Now, I've mentioned in previous vlogs that I've been spending some of my time writing text, and this is some of it. This seems like an opportune time to mention that one of the influences we have chosen since the outset, since before the outset, to draw upon, is MUDs. For those of you who've played MUDs, they're a bit passé these days. Multi-user dungeons, basically multiplayer online text adventures. They're kind of like MMORPGs, except all displayed in text and descriptions for the most part, and with a traditional Zork style, go north, attack squirrel, that kind of stuff. And we both appreciate that sort of level of descriptiveness of a game world. So we tried to introduce an element of that here. So here we have the very starting area as it stands at the moment. Now, like all parts of the game, the descriptions are subject to change at a later date. And it was important to us to not have them be intrusive. There's nothing more annoying than trying to play a game when you've had a few attempts at it before, it's maybe your 5th attempt, and you keep being stopped in your tracks by some obnoxious text pop-up, and you just want to click off and go, no, I've read that already, don't make me read it every time. Which is why we have our text hanging unobtrusively at the top. So you can read it if you want to, but it's not strictly necessary, and it's certainly not necessary every time. But you can reread it if you want to remind yourself of what area you're in and try and get a feel for the game. Which is something we're trying to go for here. Roguelikes are often very dry. You can see this is sort of a tree-filled area. It's probably not going to be this tree-filled in its finished form, but at the moment it is. In contrast to the very sort of stony, clay, sandstone peninsula where you start off here. Yes, this is an outside area, not a cave or anything. Which you might expect from a roguelike. Yeah, roguelikes are traditionally not that big on their setting. There are a few that are, things like Tome 4, for instance, But generally not that big on setting and not that big on creating an atmosphere or evoking a feel. So that's something we're trying to introduce here. It's one of our two really main objectives. There's another one, which is the way we're designing the gameplay. But anyway, we'll have a walk around. So there are a few zones scattered around. At the moment, each zone, I think apart from the forest, is only one area, but they're probably going to be expanded before the week is out. So let's have a little read of what's going on in some of these places. We'll head north here. We're into the hills of the region we're calling Dorness. Confession time. We actually used a fantasy name generator to create some of the names, including that one. Whereas other ones came from me. Dorness was a generated one. I just liked the sound of it as sort of an elegant, scenic area. So that's what it ended up being. Here we are in the area which is named Amongst the Hills of Dorness. So the zone would be the Dorness region of the world, and this is one area within that zone, Amongst the Hills. You're travelling through the scenic region of Dorness. The warm easterly breeze brings hints of delicate aromas from the tiny, vivid flowers that dot the gentle vales here. See the tiny, vivid flowers? Slender streams glisten like silver thread as they wind between the enfolding hills. To the north, drifting clouds seem to cling briefly to the apex of a tall, slender tower. The shadowy tangle of Westerway forestland stretches away southwest, interrupted only by the stumps of the broken arch rearing grandly above. So, we've done two things here, which I didn't want to get into too much detail about. We want to maintain some surprise, but you will notice that there's the description of where we are, and then there are a couple of sentences at the bottom of that describing what can be seen from here, which are actually two separate entities. The area description, which is where you're standing, and the horizon description, which is what's visible from where you're standing in neighbouring zones. So there's that. That's the way the game is working at the moment. Like I said, there's not a lot here. I mean, there are a couple of other areas off this way. For instance, we can go into the forest here. And you'll notice, as I said, they all look fairly samey at the moment because specifics of environments haven't been put into the generation thing yet. So this region is actually a forest and will probably actually look like this, whereas places like this and Dorness, where we were a moment ago, probably won't look like this. They might have trees, but they won't be this heavily wooded. Whereas this is Westerway Forestland, which is a deep, tangled forest, so it will probably look more or less like this. But again, we don't have area generation done. This is pretty cursory sort of area generation here. It's not going to be just a series of crossroads, I can tell you that. And we will most likely vary area sizes as well. But this is what we have so far. Travelling through Westerway Forestland. You're walking through the shadowed depths of Westerway Forestland. The ground here basks in fine... bad grammar. In a fine hazy glow of golden light breaking through the leaves, mingled with ribbons of shadow cast by the thickly tangled branches overhead. Every breath carries the heavy scent of rich earth and sticky sweet undergrowth. The constant chirps and rustles of the deep forest occasionally yield sharply to periods of unnatural silence. And then we get into the horizon. Occasionally, occasionally to the northeast, you catch a glimpse of a slim white tower through gaps in the branches overhead. You know, so that's horizon following the immediate area description. So this is what we have in place so far. There's a lot of design going on behind the scenes, but this is what is physically there at the moment. And our title, at least so far, is Void Sanctum. Very portentous. And it's called that for a reason, which will become apparent when you play it. Thanks for joining me on this little tour through what exists of our 7DRL so far. And wish me continuing luck for the days to come. Bye for now.